My name is David, and my last day as an FBI agent was a rainy one. The rain beat against my windshield as I drove away from DC for good, and the rhythmic sweep of the wipers was almost unbearable. For most people, it's a soothing sound. For me, it's an echo of the sound that ended my career and my sanity. A sound that started on a perfectly clear summer night in the White House Rose Garden. My post wasn't physical protection. I was in electronic surveillance and countermeasures. I was one of the guys in a windowless room surrounded by monitors, making sure every sensor, every camera, every microphone was operating perfectly. The surveillance is total, a digital web covering every inch of the grounds. We thought nothing could happen without us knowing. We were wrong. The night in question was during a high-stakes state visit. The 8-year-old son of a visiting foreign diplomat, a boy named Thomas, went missing. He was last seen playing near the South Lawn during the reception. One minute he was there, the next he was gone. The panic was immediate, but kept under wraps. An international incident was brewing. We were tasked with a full sweep of all audio and video feeds, rewinding minute by minute. There was no sign of him leaving the gates. He had to be on the grounds. As time ticked by, the search grew more frantic, though to the remaining guests everything looked normal. The Marine band played softly in the distance. That's when I caught it. On a long-range parabolic microphone aimed near the Rose Garden, I picked up an anomaly. It wasn't a voice or a cry. It was a low, rhythmic humming sound, almost a click. It sounded insectoid, but it was perfectly regular, a mathematical pattern that wasn't natural. Click, hum, pause. Click, hum. I dispatched a uniformed team to investigate, guiding them by radio. Approaching audio source east quadrant of the Rose Garden, I said, my face close to the screen. Confirm visual. The response I got sent a jolt of ice through my veins. Control, we have visual. It's the boy. He's just standing there. They described the scene. Thomas was standing motionless, facing a bed of white roses. His eyes were open but vacant, and the sound was coming from him. He was emitting that rhythmic clicking hum from his mouth without his lips moving. The agents approached slowly. "Thomas, are you okay?" one of them asked. The boy didn't react. He just continued the sound, a hypnotic, monotonous drone. When an agent touched a shoulder, the sound stopped instantly. The boy blinked, looked around as if waking from a deep trance, and asked where his parents were. He had no memory of the past 90 minutes. He was physically unharmed, but something was deeply wrong. The doctors examined him. No drugs in his system, no signs of physical trauma. The official explanation was a stress-induced sleepwalking episode. It was all swept under the rug. The boy was returned to his parents, and the diplomatic crisis was averted. But I had the recording. That sound. I couldn't get that sound out of my head. I heard it when I was trying to sleep. The hum of a ceiling fan would morph into that rhythmic pattern. The ticking of a clock would start to sound like the clicks. I started getting debilitating headaches. I took the recording to our audio forensics analyst, an MIT genius. He ran it through every filter he had. His conclusion was disturbing. He said the sound was not biological in origin. It contained frequencies and overtones that shouldn't be producible by human vocal cords. He said it was structured more like a data transmission, an incomprehensible language encoded in audio. He advised me, off the record, to delete the file and forget I ever heard it. My health deteriorated. I had panic attacks, convinced the sound was trying to tell me something, or worse, trying to reprogram me. I would catch myself humming the rhythm under my breath without realizing it. I started avoiding quiet places, because that's when I heard it most clearly. The White House, that place of monitored silence, became my personal torture chamber. I felt like something had been planted in my brain, something that came from that garden that night. One night, I was alone in the monitoring room, and I swear I saw all the screens flicker in the exact same rhythm as the sound in my head. That's when I knew I had to get out. My request for a medical transfer was approved quickly. No one asked too many questions. I think they were just relieved I was going. On my last day, as I handed in my security pass, I looked out a window toward the rose garden. It was perfectly manicured, the white roses swaying gently in the breeze. It looked so peaceful, so normal. But I know what's there. It's not a ghost. It's something older, something that doesn't belong, something that can communicate, and for some reason, it chose an 8-year-old boy to be its speaker. I sometimes wonder if Thomas still hears the sound, and I pray that he's the only one.
My last day at the Bureau was a formality. The psychiatrists used terms like acute post-traumatic stress and situational anxiety. The paperwork will say it was the result of a shooting I was involved in years prior, a delayed trigger. It's a convenient lie we all agreed to. The truth is, my career ended on a cold November night on the second floor of the White House residence. The truth smells like ozone, feels as cold as a tomb, and has the silhouette of a man who should have been dead for over 150 years. Security work at the White House is 99% boredom and 1% absolute, soul-crushing panic. That night, we were in the middle of that 1% panic. A young aide from the communications team, Anna, had gone missing. She was last seen heading to her small office in the East Wing around 9 p.m. By 11 p.m., she wasn't at her desk and wasn't answering her phone. A discreet alert went out. You don't just go missing inside the White House. It's a security nightmare. We swept everything: security cameras, access logs, every hallway and supply closet. It was as if she had simply evaporated. The tension was suffocating. The possibility of a breach or an insider threat hung heavy in the air. My patrol route that night included the residence. I was passing the Lincoln bedroom around 2 a.m. The door was closed, as it should be, but as I walked by, I felt a temperature drop so drastic that my breath plumed in front of my face. The hair on my arms and the back of my neck stood straight up. Trained to identify anomalies, I stopped and put my hand on the brass doorknob. It was ice cold to the touch. Against protocol, I used my master keycard and eased the door open. The room was dark, lit only by the faint moonlight filtering through the tall window. And that's when I saw him. A tall, thin man standing with his back to me, looking out the window toward the Washington Monument. He wasn't a misty ghost. He looked solid, real. He was wearing a worn black frock coat. I couldn't see his face, but I knew. Every rational part of my brain screamed that it was impossible, but my gut, the instinct that had kept me alive for 12 years in the Bureau, knew exactly who I was looking at. He didn't turn. He simply raised one long, skeletal arm and pointed toward a dark corner of the room near an antique wardrobe. My hand went to my sidearm instinctively. "Sir, identify yourself." My voice came out as a weak, trembling thing, nothing like a federal agent. The figure didn't move, its arm still extended. Slowly, I sidestepped, keeping my eyes on the figure, and aimed my flashlight beam into the corner he was indicating. And there she was, Anna. She was crumpled on the floor, hugging her knees. Her mouth was open in a silent scream, her eyes wide and fixed on something only she could see. But that wasn't what made my blood freeze. Her hair, once a vibrant brown, was now streaked with thick shocks of white. There were deep lines etched around her eyes and mouth. The skin on her hands looked like thin, aged paper. She looked like she had aged 40 years in under 5 hours. The moment my light hit her, the figure by the window dissolved. It didn't vanish or fade. It dissolved, like smoke in the darkness, and the profound cold in the room went with it. What followed was a whirlwind of classified procedure. Anna was rushed to a secure medical wing. She was catatonic, unresponsive. The only sound she made as they carried her from the room, she whispered a single word, over and over: waiting. The official report was that Anna had suffered a sudden acute psychotic break due to stress and was found in a state of confusion. The rapid aging? It was attributed to a rare, undocumented medical condition triggered by the trauma. It was an explanation so absurd it could only be official. I was debriefed for hours by men in suits I'd never seen before. They didn't ask me what I saw. They told me what I saw. A staffer in crisis. Any mention of the figure in the window was met with cold stares and a quiet reminder of the national security oath I'd sworn. In the following months, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that gaunt, pointing hand and Anna's aged, terrified face. I started seeing the tall, shadowy silhouette in reflections at the end of dark hallways, always with his back to me. I was coming apart. I was diagnosed with PTSD, and the offer of an early medical retirement was a mercy. Anna was moved to a private institution somewhere in Maryland. I heard she never recovered. She just sits there, waiting. Waiting for who or what, no one ever found out. The Lincoln bedroom was closed for renovations for 6 months after that. It wasn't seeing a ghost that broke me. Agents see terrible things. What broke me was the absolute certainty that history isn't dead. It lives in those walls, and sometimes it wakes up. And when it does, it doesn't just haunt, it acts. It touches our world, warps it, ages a young woman in a matter of hours. How do you fight that? How do you protect the president from a ghost that can rewrite reality inside a single room? You can't. And that's the truth that made me turn in my badge. The truth is that the biggest threat in the White House isn't an intruder. It's the house itself. Today is my last day. As I walk out through the gates, I don't feel pride in my service. I feel the weight of a secret I can never tell, and the fear that somewhere in that house, a dead president is still standing by a window, waiting to point at the next person.
My last day with the FBI was spent staring at my own reflection in a dark window, searching for something I prayed I wouldn't find. Most people think the job at the White House is about protecting it from outside threats. They're wrong. The most terrifying threat I ever encountered was already inside, and it wore my own face. I was in the counter-surveillance division, which meant my job was to look for things that weren't supposed to be there. Listening devices, hidden cameras, digital security breaches. This meant I spent a lot of time alone at odd hours in some of the most sensitive places on Earth, including the Situation Room. The Sit Room isn't like in the movies. It's a series of secure, tech-filled conference rooms built to be impenetrable. It's the nerve center where reality is analyzed and world-shaping decisions are made. The incident started with the disappearance of a Secret Service agent, a guy named Miller. He was one of the best, part of the president's protective detail. One night, he just didn't show up for his shift. An alert was raised. He hadn't left the complex. His keys, weapon, and credentials were in his locker. He'd vanished somewhere between the West Wing mess and the Oval Office. A quiet, desperate search began. As part of the investigation, I was tasked with performing a full electronic sweep of the Situation Room, looking for any anomalous signals, anything Miller might have seen or triggered. It was 3 a.m. The room was cold and silent, a pressurized quiet that seems to suck the sound out of the air. The walls of the main conference room and the sit room are lined with massive display screens. They were all powered down, just reflective black surfaces. As I moved my equipment around the room, I caught something in one of the main monitors. It wasn't a normal reflection. Amidst my own image reflected in the dark glass, I could see another figure standing just behind me. It was Miller. He looked pale, his face twisted in an expression of pure terror.
He was looking right at me, his mouth moving, but no sound was coming out. My heart stopped. I spun around instantly. There was no one there. The room was empty. I looked back at the screen. Miller was still there in the reflection, and now he was shaking his head frantically, his eyes pleading with me. I stepped closer to the screen, my own reflection becoming clearer, and then the most terrifying thing happened. My own reflection began to change. A slow, predatory smile spread across my reflected face, a smile I had never made in my life. My reflected eyes darkened, becoming black, empty pits. Behind me in the reflection, Miller recoiled, his fear now aimed not at me, but at the thing wearing my face. Miller's reflection raised a trembling hand and pointed not at me, but at my reflection. Then, my reflection turned its head slowly and looked at him. The image of Miller on the screen screamed silently and was yanked violently out of view by something I couldn't see. And then, my reflection looked back at me, grinned again, and the monitor went completely black. I stood there, paralyzed, staring at the now dark screen, sweat pouring down my back. I didn't report what I saw. How could I? That a powered-down monitor was showing a live feed of a missing agent being terrorized by my own demonic doppelganger? They would have locked me away. I finished my sweep, found nothing, and in my report, I noted an unexplained power fluctuation in the main monitor. Miller was never found. A few months later, the Secret Service quietly informed his family that he had abandoned his post and was likely living under a new identity. Another convenient lie. I couldn't work there anymore. I couldn't walk those halls without feeling the eyes of that thing on me. I started avoiding my own reflection. I found myself covering mirrors. I'd drape a cloth over the TV and my computer monitor when I wasn't using them. I had nightmares where my reflection would step out of the mirror wearing that same awful smile and tell me it was time for us to switch places. The bureau psychiatrist said I was suffering from a severe case of imposter syndrome, exacerbated by the high-stress environment. He didn't understand. I wasn't afraid of being an imposter. I was afraid that an imposter was waiting to take my place. On my last day, as I was leaving, I walked past one of the large windows in the ground floor corridor. For just a second, I paused and looked at my reflection in the glass darkened by the evening outside. For a split second, I saw it. That smile. I blinked and it was gone, leaving only my own tired, frightened face. It was enough. I quickened my pace and didn't look back. I don't know what lives in that room or in that house, but I know it's watching, and I know it has my face. Sometimes I wonder if Agent Miller saw his own reflection smile back at him just before he disappeared for good.